Welcome to 20th Century Stories. Tonight we travel to Aden in 1954. A corrugated shed on the quay holds paper order beside tarped cargo, while the Suez route hums beyond the harbor mouth. Ships from 3 oceans slide in under a hot sky and move on with quiet precision. Here the hours pass in chalk lines, carbon copies, and the steady breath of a ceiling fan. Before we begin, settle in. Find a comfortable place. Let your breathing slow. This is your time to drift from the day, to ease into sleep at your own pace. If these quiet journeys help you rest, you can subscribe to 20th Century Stories. So another story is always waiting. The shed keeps its own weather. Tin roof ticking, shade deep as tea, a ceiling fan turning like a slow clock hand, air moving just enough to carry the smell of cardamom and rope tar. Beyond the doors, the quay throws light like hammered brass. Tarps ripple on cargo stacks. A dow's lateen sleeps against its mast while a steamer in the roadstead blows a breath you feel more than hear. The Red Sea walks in and out with a small glitter at the lip. Inside, crates stand in rows with chalk. Marks like tidy arithmetic, arrows for up, numerals in 2 scripts. Ship names abbreviated on the end grain. Twine boughs flattened by long travel. I hang my cap on the nail by the desk. Roll my sleeves once, set the ledger square. Paper calm in a hot room. The work is to make movement sit still long enough to count it. Ink pad opened. Stamp lifted and tested on scrap. Date straight. Depot marked true. I press the seal into the first manifest and watch the purple bloom settle. 1 copy. 2. 3. Carbon pages breathing their shadow between. The tally sheet takes the ship's name in neat capitals. Port of origin, Bombay, via Port Sudan. Remarks left blank for now. Pencil point sharp as a rule. A crate's label has torn where a corner pressed too hard. I ease its flap with a moistened finger. Let the fibers lie down. Paste from the pot laid thin with the back of the brush. Twine touched and snugged. The paper sets as if it always meant to stay. A rope sling hangs from a painted hook. I test its splice with both hands. Fibers talk in a quiet rasp. The thimble sits honest in its eye. I give it a measured lift and let it down. No creak that, says worry. Chalk a small tick on the beam to mean sound. Scales sit on their pad like a squat animal. Sand drifts to the dial edge. I sweep the platform with 3 long strokes. A small whirl of grit leaves and the pointer returns to 0 with an air of relief. The first crate of the lot steps onto steel with 2 porters' help. Feet bare. Rhythm. Even. I read the number. Weybridge settles with a sigh. I speak the kilos and write them twice. Ledger and slip. Then set the carbon set beneath my hand for the triplicate that follows. A breeze touches the tarps and lifts cardamom into the shed. Under it moves clove, coffee. A line of frankincense that smells like a memory caught in a church. I log the spice mark on the sideboard where the inspector will glance later and nod. From the harbor mouth a tanker gives a low note. Out on the roadstead a tug answers. The Suez rut carries its quiet spine past us all afternoon. Ships sliding like thoughts along a known sentence. I'd keep the figures and let the sea keep its distances. Tickets in the drawer rattle when I shift the ink block. I set them still, open the water bottle, and wet the stamp pad's edge. The purple darkens a shade and holds. No blur, no feathering. The mark will read at a glance, even when eyes are tired. A porter returns a torn chalk to the box with a grin. I break it clean and pass him half. He marks a triangle on a crate that needs to travel high. The white looks cool against the burlap. Instruction given without a raised voice, manifest lines grow. Crate numbers in a soft column, weight, contents, consignee. Remarks, the neeb scrapes and then hushes. Paper accepts each figure like small rain on parched ground. I tie a paper tag to a rope bale. Test the knot so it will not go its own way when the sling lifts. Tug once more and feel the answer. A good knot is a kind of friendship, quiet, reliable, not in a hurry to show itself off. Sweat runs and dries in the same breath. The fan turns. The ceiling collects the long afternoon. I set the blotter on the fresh stamps and lift it slow. Letters stay where they were asked to. The desk smells of gum, Arabic, and wood. The room finds a slow equilibrium. From the quay, a call rises and softens. Not urgency. Only names crossing air. Arabic writing English. English answering back. The words make a braid you could lean on. I sharpen the pencil with the small knife that knows paper better than rope. Shavings curl like thin cinnamon. I save them in a tin because a neat desk sets the mind to the pace the day requires. A crate branded mocha sits light on the scale for its size. Coffee in burlap under pine. I mark the figure and write the same into the small duplicate that will live with the cargo until the next port speaks its welcome. The sun leans, the tin roof clicks again, the shed smells stronger. Spice and canvas, ink and tar. I make a note for later to test the other sling. Check the thin twine stocks, lay fresh chalk in the box. Such lines hold tomorrow ready before you get there. Outside, gulls turn like bits of paper. A stevedore ties his scarf tighter. A boy pushes a broom along the quay and leaves behind a stripe that reads like water. The harbor breathes and remembers how it has done so for 100 seasons. I press the depot seal once more. Set the date with a light touch that keeps it square. Lay the pages to dry in a tidy fan. Then I take the broom to the scale again because sand has a way of returning. 3 strokes. A pause. 3 strokes. The pointer finds its 0 as if glad of it. The ledger waits. The next line asks for numbers and receives them. The fan turns, the sea moves. Paper concludes each small journey into a figure and a name. Heat and light and spice and rope and chalk become a page that will make sense when the day is finished, and the ship has already become a smaller shape on the horizon. The hour flattens to late afternoon. Heat settles like cloth. The fan's blades count it in patient quarters. A ribbon of light crawls across the ledger and stops on the column where remarks begin. A junior from the customs house brings a sheaf of pinks and yellows. Triplicate sets clipped neat. He leaves them with a nod. Tea glass sweating in his other hand. The paper smells faintly of damp ink and eucalyptus from the storeroom. I check the bill of lading against the manifest. Ship. Mark. Numbers. The arithmetic. Of distance reduced to rows that will live in a file long after the hull has turned the corner of Africa. The stamp takes a fresh breath from the pad. The purple blooms true. Depot crest square. Date straight. 1, 2, 3. I lay the blotter. over the set and lift it slow. The carbon takes the pressure like a shadow agreeing. A string file waits on its hook. I spear the corner with a brass eye and let the papers fall into company with their own kind. Small order inside large movement. A quiet dockyard of sheets under a tin roof. A crate bound for port side stands with its label sweating loose. I coax it flat, brush a thin run of paste, thumb the corners down. The fibers surrender and lie. I pencil the consignee's name again where salt had faded it. The letters walk in both scripts without quarrel. Beside the door, the spare sling hangs like a question. I climb the 3-rung stool and press the eye, splice firm, whipping tight. The hook's latch springs and returns with a clean yes. I chalk a small circle on the beam. Ready 2 porters roll a bale of jute onto the platform. The scale pointer quivers, settles. I say the number. The scribe at my elbow writes it twice. Ledger and slip. I pull the carbon with a fingernail so the figures read clean. The bale leaves a faint scent of dust and river on the steel. A weight block sits in its drawer, 20 kilograms. Smooth corners polished by years. I set it on the plate to remind. The scale what true feels like. The needle lands where it should. A small satisfaction. I sweep a ring of sand away from the pivot, because sand believes every desk is partly beach. From the roadstead a siren turns once. Low and far, a tug answers with 2 short notes. The Suez spine flexes around us without hurry. Ships from east and west exchanging courtesies in a language of lamps and draught. Inside the shed a crate of cloves makes the room a ceremony. Under it there is rope and tar, and the warm mineral of corrugated iron. I write clove gyro, no. 17 in the remarks and draw a small triangle, so the stackers lift it high and keep it dry. The typewriter ribbon likes a pause. I feed it forward with an inked thumb. The keys stamp out the cargo list for the yard boss. Letters march with the slight tilt the Olivetti learned in the previous war. Not perfect, honest. The page carries the sound of work like a drum heard through a wall. A boy from the pier brings a torn twine spool. I give him 2 lengths and show the square knot slow enough to keep. His hands learn the turn and the tuck. He grins with his eyes and runs back into the white heat outside. A tin of chalk sits open, sticks like little bones. I mark arrows on 2 crates for up, a diagonal slash for fragile, 3 dots for priority transfer. The port codes live in my wrist now. Less remembered than carried, the inspector steps in and clicks a lead seal on a latch. I note the number he reads, 76,421. The impression clean, the cable tight. We initial each other's margins. Paper becomes trust. Trust becomes movement. Movement becomes a quiet key at dusk. I test a rope sling under the eave where shade keeps the tar soft. Lift to the count of 5. Hold. Lower. The hook bite shows no scar. The thimble sits true. Fibers speak only their usual low rasp. I chalk the cuff of my sleeve without meaning to. The mark looks like a map of a shoreline I have never seen. At the desk I mend the corner of the customs stamp where the rubber had thought about parting. A dab of glue. Weight of a paperweight in the shape of a dowel. The curve of the hull catching light. The fix will hold until a new die comes from town. A lorry idles beyond the door. Diesel breath mixes with cardamom and salt. Porters call 1. to another in a braid of words that does not need translating to mean careful now. Lift together. Mind the edge. I hand a man a paper tag for a crate-bound almond. He pins it to burlap with a thorn the way his father did. The tag looks flimsy and proves stubborn. We trade a nod at the old rightness of it. Carbon sheets grow tired when the day grows long. I turn the set and use the fresh corner. Figures print crisp again. I blot, fan the pages, stack them under a stone. Gum Arabic dries to a faint sweetness you can taste if you breathe too close. A clerk from the harbor master's office leans in with a telex strip. Line of arrivals for morning. Greek freighter. Karachi coaster. A Dow convoy if the wind keeps. I pin it to the board and copy the names onto a small card I keep in my pocket like a prayer. Sand creeps back to the scale as if by habit. I sweep. Once, then twice, the pointer settles to 0. The platform looks like a tide just went out, small swirls. A clean shine beneath. At the doorway, I chalk an arrow on the floor where the pallet jack must keep its nose. The paint mark from last. Season faded to opinion. Chalk makes it law again for an afternoon. The ledger takes another calm line. Box marks, weights, destinations, remarks. A row of numbers that carry the room's temperature and the sea's breath and the sound of a fan into a future drawer. Paper that will make sense to a stranger because the day was written as it happened. I did the stamp, cap the paste, knot the twine, set the weight block back in its hollow. The shed answers with a quieter timbre. The fan turns. The heat steps, down by a finger's width. Beyond the doors the key keeps moving, as if on ball bearings. A map of 3 oceans passing under a single piece of corrugated roof. I drink from the bottle and feel the water land like good news. Set it down, square the blotter. Take up the chalk again, and walk to a crate whose stenciled letters have traveled farther than I ever will. Heel then toe, toe then heel. Small order in a wide world. Numbers and knots making peace with distance, one slow figure at a time. Late light lays a copper strip across the floor. It moves from the door to the scale, then stalls. The fan clicks once and keeps its patient orbit. A bead of sweat travels, cools, vanishes. The inspector's tin of seals sits open like a tray of coins. I lift one by its wire, numbers tiny as a prayer. 76,422. The press jaws meet and close. Lead takes the crest clean. The cable sings a short note and goes still. I copy the digits into the margin and underline them once. Wax for export stamps softens in its spoon. I strike the match. Blue flame quiet. The stick turns to a red lake, a circle on the crate's corner. Die down, lift. The emblem shines for a breath and then dulls to proper work. I fan the corner with a ledger card so it cures flat. Triplicate sets grow like small tides by the blotter. Pink, yellow, white. I square the corners with a tap. The carbon peels back with a tiny sigh. Figures agree from top to bottom. A faith built from pressure and patience. The Olivetti asks for a ribbon. I draw it forward a finger's width. Keys. Answer with neat stems and bowls. The line for remarks makes room for fragile keep dry. The metal letters walk their old march without swagger. A porter brings me a label washed pale by salt. I re-ink the stencil with a felt pad. Bombay darkens to a clean black. I set the cardamom mark beside it 3 diagonal strokes, so the stackers will give it air. Chalk cool against the burlap. Instruction written without a voice raised. A bale sits light on the plate in a way that makes me suspicious. I set the 20-kilo block to remind the scale of gravity. The needle obeys, and the numbers land where they should. I sweep the line. Of sand that had crept back as if it lived here. The platform blinks like a polished coin. From the harbor, the muezzin's call folds over diesel and gull. Voices on the quay lower a measure. The tug gives 2 patient notes and noses a freighter toward its berth. The Suez road keeps its pulse, east to west, west to east. A map written in wakes. Inside, rope and spice and hot iron make a single smell. I drink from the bottle. Water tastes of tin and mercy. The fan ticks again, still faithful. Still slow, a rope sling earns its check. I sound whipping tight, thimble seated. I chalk a tiny circle on the beam ready. I step its twin aside for repair tomorrow and write splice on a card I pen. Through the coil with a thorn the porter hands me. 2 sacks of coffee drag shadow over the concrete. I count the stitch marks at their throats, 7 and 7. A tell a stevedore showed me years ago. 7 means full measure. 5 means talk. I note 7s in the margin and trust the sacks. The stamp pad starts to thirst. I touch it with a spoon of water and turn the blotter over. The purple returns to itself, crisp edges, crest square, date straight. The sound the stamp makes is a modest thud, enough to say present. Not enough to argue, I loop a red string through a bonded tag. The knot gets a second tuck so the customs man can see diligence without being told. The tag hangs like a small flag of restraint. This one waits for paper before travel. At the door I chalk a fat arrow for the pallet jack's nose. The paint from last year has faded to rumor. Chalk makes it law again for an evening. The porter nods without looking. Muscle memory reads symbols quicker than eyes. A lorry backs with a breath of diesel. The driver's hand makes a circle. We hold movement at the threshold. I count with a finger in the ledger. He counts with his arm in the gearbox. When his reverse bell stops, the numbers and the wheels say the same thing. Sun drops behind thee. Ridge, the shed turns to tea-colored shadow. I trim the hurricane lamp and clean the chimney, inside first. Then out, flame to a patient thread, the stamp still reads. The margins still welcome figures. The room leans cooler by a finger's width. I set the last batch of seals in a row like buttons. Close the tin, cap the wax. Lay the spoon on the ledge to forget its heat. The desk carries the day lightly. Gum, chalk, weights, a knife that knows paper better than rope. Order the size of a palm, evening hums in a lower key. The fan's chain taps the column once each turn. Beyond the threshold, the key thins to smaller sounds. Boot on board, rope over bit, gulls like paper cutouts against a violet strip of sky. I walk the shed with a small brush and a tin. Nails that thought about rust get a kiss of oil. Hinges breathe easier. The sliding door rides its rail. Without that one note I promised to teach it. Metal remembers kindness. The spare sling I marked for tomorrow sits obedient on its hook. I pass a hand along the lay. Fibers say rest. I answer with a nod that is mostly for me. The ledger opens where the ribbon left it. I write the hour in. Small numbers list the seal digits I pressed. 7642276431. Marks neat, no flourish. The kind of handwriting a stranger can read when heat and time make patience short. A telex strip flutters at the pen board. Arrivals at first light, Pelagos from Piraeus, all Mirage Dow convoy, weather permitting. Coaster from Karachi delayed 6 hours. I copy the names on a pocket card. The pocket likes to keep faith even when the wall is thorough. A brittle tag corner. Needs mending, starch paste, thumbnail. Breath held so the paper lies. The brush lays a thin shine that dries to matte. I press the blotter and lift. The letters behave. Someone will read this tomorrow without knowing I thought about it tonight. Triplicate book gets a fresh carbon. I tear the old sheet square and save the clean margin. Good paper is a kind of currency. You don't spend it rude. The scale receives. A last sweep for form's sake. Sand still believes it belongs. The pointer settles to 0 as if relieved. The weight block returns to its drawer with the contentment of a tool going home. At the doorway I pull the chalk from my pocket and write 2 letters on the floor where the pallet jack should not wander. No in a hand, the night men know. Not a command. A courtesy to future ankles, a port boy brings mint tea on a tray, glass fogged, sugar already dissolved. I set it beside the blotter and breathe steam that knows gardens I've never seen. The sip lands like a promise I'll keep, slow, exact, kind. From the roadstead a freighter's whistle steps down through fifths. A tug answers. Lanterns shuffle. Along the black water, we work in parallel, they move weight. I move paper. Both end at the same ledger in different rooms. I test the door bar that meets the padlock. A single grain of sand finds the file and ceases to be a thought. The bolt now fits like a number in a proper column. Small frictions erase before they try a larger voice. The Olivetti's cover goes on warm. I leave a note for the morning girl. About the ribbon. 2 clicks forward if the letters tire. Spare in the right drawer. She will read it with half an eye and not break her stride. Lost and found fits in a cigar tin today. A brass button. A fragment of blue ribbon. A thin coin from a place the Suez knows by heart. I tape the coin to a card and write found key. 3. The tape bites. The card goes to the nail by the door. Some journeys end not far from where they began. The hurricane lamp's glass blurs with heat. I wipe it with the cloth, inside first. Then out. Flame returns to its thread. The stamp takes one last impression without smudging. Crest crisp. Date square. The page looks finished. I closed a ledger without snapping it. Lay the pencil along the spine. Set the weight block in the center so the book remembers to be flat. The fan turns. The sea breathes. Tarps settle. The shed smells of rope, spice, iron, ink. A dictionary of comb. At the threshold I sweep the sill so the first footstep of morning lands on clean concrete. Broom leaves a light arc like water. I hang it by its wire so bristles keep their line lock. Chain. One last look along rows that have turned. From cargo into shapes, chalk ghosts, tags sleeping, seals cooling to their ordinary gray. Paper calm holding a world in modest squares, I step into key air the temperature of tea. The tug's lantern winks once. Twice the roadstead answers. I breathe with the harbor, slow in, slow out, heel then toe, toe then heel. The shed behind. Me a quiet fact. The sea ahead a longer sentence I don't need to finish tonight. The quay gives way to street. Heat leaves in slow layers. Diesel fades to charcoal smoke from small braziers. Kettles talk in whispers. A boy runs with bread wrapped in old newsprint. Headlines from far away carried under sesame. I walk past shutters half down. Tin cups stacked. Like coins, a tailor folding chalked cloth. His scissors closing with a sound that belongs to late day. A radio behind a grill murmurs cricket and weather. The announcer's voice polished smooth by distance. My shoes carry a spoon of sand each. I tap them on a step. Grit shakes loose. The door chain answers with the note I know. Room cooler by a finger's width. Pitcher sweating on the sill, I wash the day from my hands. Cardamom still clings at the knuckle. Ink in the cuticle gives a small violet moon. The enamel bowl gleams like a good scale. Towel holds the heat from my face and lets it go. Supper is simple and exact. Rice that remembers water. Lentils with a lemon that has seen better fruit and still keeps its promise. I sit where the fan can find me. Tea steeps to the color of ship's paint baked one season too long. Sugar by a pinch. On the balcony the harbor writes in lights. Mastheads like careful stars. A dhow rides the swell as if nodding. The tug's lantern works the edge of the roadstead. Somewhere a bell strikes a half hour that belongs to ships, not clocks. I open the pocket card and copy tomorrow's arrivals into the little book that keeps tidy company by itself. Convoy if wind agrees. Karachi coaster delayed. Each name a door that will open in paper before it opens on iron. The pencil point wants a knife. 2 turns. Shavings curl like thin spice. The blade smells faintly of gum. I cap the paste pot in my mind. I set the stamp in its drawer by leaning my thoughts the way you lean a box into a stack. The body rehearses rest the way a stevedore rehearses lift. A gecko claims the wall near the lamp. Tongue flick. Stillness returned. The neighborhood lowers. Its voice. Plates rinse in distant basins. A prayer shawl crosses a roof like a small sail on a private wind. I write a line on a card for morning. Test spare sling. Fetch new carbon. Count seals to 80. Chalk the palette nose. Sweep the scale first thing. Notes arranged like crates in a lane, each with space to pass and none likely to topple. The cup goes down on its saucer with a click. That says enough. I shut the shutters to a hand's breadth. The room becomes a cooler color. The balcony keeps the harbor as a picture I can set aside without losing it. Dawn lifts like steam from a kettle left off the boil. The air carries stone and salt and a trace of kerosene. Street cats step out of shadow already knowing their rounds. I take the lane back toward the quay. Ropes on bollards hold dew like beads. The tug coughs once and becomes deliberate. A gull scribbles itself across a slab of sky and decides that is enough. The shed key turns. Hinge remembers last night's oil and behaves. The room accepts me. Like a ledger accepts a line. Fan chain taps the column once each orbit. The lamp by the desk yields a single squeak as if clearing its throat. First job is quiet. Sweep the sill so the day's first boot meets clean concrete. A broom leaves a crescent like a tide mark. Scale gets 3 strokes. Pointer lands at 0 with the relief of a man who found his seat on time. Chalkbox replenished. White like. Dry bone. Strings of red and blue cut to length. Tags stacked. Paste lidded, the stamp pad touched with a spoon of water. Purple returns to its work. Crest square. Date true, a long whistle carries from the outer anchorage. Pelagos leans into the harbor like a sentence coming to its verb. The tug answers. The roadstead accepts another hull as if it were a thought finishing where it meant to. I pinned the telex names to the board. Match them to my pocket card. Copy to the ledger's margin. 3 places for one truth, so none will lose it when heat starts to loosen patience. Porters arrive in pairs. Scarves bright, palms chalked. Their nods are the grammar we use to begin. I test the spare sling I marked for repair. Splice redone before breakfast. Eye tight, thimble honest. I chalk a neat O on the beam. Ready, first crate slides onto steel. Cardamom, I read the mark. Weigh, speak, write, blot. The dance becomes today's version of itself. Not the same, not new. Just right, inspector seals counted to 80, 10 closed. Number noted. I strike wax to a spoon and let the red lake bloom on paper and burlap, die down, lift, impression clean, cable pinned. Digits popped. The hush after each press the size of a breath. A clerk from harbor office brings the convoy note. Al mirage. And by noon, if the wind keeps its side of the bargain, I set a fresh stack of triplicates on the desk, paper ready for movement that has not yet stepped through the door. A crate-branded Kenya tea stands in a light that looks like a coin. I mend. A corner. Pencil the consignee in both hands of the language we use, one for the quay, one for the inland road. The twine knot earns a second turn and a flattening thumb. Sand returns to the scale because it likes to. I sweep it back to the doorway where the world can have it. The pointer smiles in its way, a straight spine. A small virtue, outside a tug. Makes a neat curve and pins a freighter to the quay with a rope quiet as a promise. Inside, the stamp lands with its tidy thud. Crest, date, room. Calm, the ledger begins its day with numbers that look like water kept in a jar. Clear, contained. Useful when asked. I breathe with it, slow in, slow out. Heel then toe, toe then heel. And the Suez broad, indifferent, faithful passes the door, as if the shed were a page in its book, and we were the lines that keep the margins true. The Greek freighter noses the quay. TUG line slackens. A bosun's whistle sketches too short. Notes. Pausers take their weight and settle. A new shade falls across the shed, mouth like a mercy. A string of oil drums arrives on a flat, black with white stencils. I chalk their numbers in a tidy column. Roll one with my boot against a wedge. The chalk bites. The bung shows its lead intact. No weep at the seam. I note sound in the margin and circle it once. A dip rod customs length slides to the shoulder and comes back clean. Transit only, no draw. Duty deferred. I stamp transit in blue. Crest square, date true. The thud of the die, a polite announcement rather than a shout. A porter eases his sling under 2 drums. I test the eye with a palm. Thimble true. Hook latch. Honest, his lift is a breath and a hold. No creak beyond the rope's low rasp. I nod and chalk a small O by the beam above the lane those drums prefer. Chalks laid like little doorstops keep the round things from remembering their nature. I add a nail where the timber thinks about wandering. 1 tap. 2. The head sits flush. The floor thanks us by staying quiet. Bills of lading arrive warm from the ship's office. Paper that crossed 3 seas to meet this desk. I check marks against stencils. Letters from Piraeus wearing a salt ghost. The Olivetti walks their names across a copy for the yard boss. Bowls and stems tilt in the honest way our machine tilts everything. The stamp pad has strength. I press duty paid in red on a crate of manufactured goods, whose ledger says today is their day. The red dries quick on planed pine. Blotter lifts without a blush. Numbers settle to their squares at the door. A gust nudges spice and diesel into a single scent. A lead seal tin opens like a small treasury. I read digits aloud and the inspector repeats them. We trade initials at the corner of a page. Trust travels as ink and lead before it travels as weight. Scale gets a ring of sand again. The broom takes it without complaint. Pointer returns to 0 and looks as pleased as a dial can look. I set the 20-kilo block for one deliberate breath. The needle lands true. Balance is a mood worth encouraging. A crate of radial parts shows a split at a cleat. I push paste with the back of a brush. Tap 2 panel pens with a light hammer. The wood forgets the quarrel it started. I rewrite the consignee across the mended. Grain, letters in both hands of our languages, neither louder. The fan chain ticks the column once each loop. The room keeps its patience. The key keeps its motion. Paper keeps both from stepping on each other's toes. By noon, the Al-Miraj convoy folds its lateen like birds. Hulls lean against the quay. With the confidence of men who know this wind, palm rope comes aboard the shed on shoulders. The fiber smells of sun and brine. I write palm in the remarks and add a dot that means dry storage. Sacks of dates arrive stitched with palm rib. Throats tied in a way that remembers older knots. I count the stitches, 7 and 7, full measure. I mark the lot with a triangle that means stack high. Sugar and fruit invites ants. Height denies them audience. Next. Gum Arabic in tins nested. Inside reed baskets. The tins clink politely. Baskets shed a dessert smell. I stamp bond in blue because paper wants to breathe before these move on. Cable seal clicks and cools. Digits copied. The clerk's pencil leaves a fine shine. A Dow captain lays a palm on the ledger and reads the columns as if they were points of a compass. He signs in a hand tidy from a different school than mine. We smile without deciding whose letters are prettier. Both carry weight. I mend a frayed label on a bale of Sudan cotton with 2 stitches of twine and a dab of paste. The brush lays a small lake. The paper lies down and learns the shape of the cloth beneath. I pencil Kylo tear beside the mark so the inland scales can be honest with the net. Palm rope slings get their minute. Splice checked. Whipping renewed with waxed twine that smells faintly of candles and ship's chapels. I work the tuck slow, hold the twine firm, press to lay flat with a thumb. Rope answers with a kindness only rope understands. At the door I chalk a lane for incoming dhows. Narrow, arrowed. Men read it with their feet while their eyes watch. Hands and loads. The chalk turns to ghost and still instructs. By evening the floor will look like a map of decisions that went well. The inspector's seal case sits lighter by 10. I note it and draw a short line issue new 10 when this falls below 5. The kind of small foresight that keeps big voices. Out of rooms that prefer murmurs, mint tea returns on a tray that sweats. I place the glass by the blotter and let steam carry gardens to the tin roof. Sugar lands like agreement on the tongue. Heat and cool sign a temporary treaty. A sand devil stumbles across the quay and forgets itself at the threshold. I sweep it back to the outside world. The scales plate shows just steel again. I set a little mat at its lip so bare feet have. I placed a pause before numbers decide their cargo. The Olivetti prints a set of gate passes. Carbon pulls clean. Dates straight. I stamp the crest with that soft thud everyone around here recognizes. Movement wrapped in manners from the roadstead. The tug sounds satisfied. One long, one short. A freighter shifts its weight against the bollards with a groan both old and friendly. In the shed a crate corner wants a paper guard. I fold one. Paste. Press. The edge learns to be harmless. Ledger lines grow into a page that already makes sense to tomorrow. Dows tallied. Drums chalked. Gum sealed. Dates stacked high. Cotton marked with tear. Rope whipped. Gate passes issued. Duty in red. Bond in blue. Remarks in two hands, but one voice. A boy fetches back the chalk I lent with only half left. I break it clean and give him the sharp. He marks an up arrow on a crate and grins because the mark looks crisp. Instruction that survives heat is a small. Joy, I cap the paste, lid the stamp, close the seal tin. Weigh block in its drawer, broom hung by its hook. The fan turns. The sea breathes. And the shed, cooler by a finger's width, carries on tallying a world that passes like water past stone, slow, exact. Generous with its patience, cloud builds without hurry over Steamer Point, a bruised rim that promises only a lesson in tarpaulins. Wind noses the shed. The fan's chain begins to tap a quicker metronome. A launch puts in with a yellow flag folded once on its staff. Fish in slatted crates over ice. The quarantine man steps first. His stamp is its own small office. He glances, nods. I mark hold perishable. On the board with a chalk that leaves a cooler line than the air feels, ice melts fast on concrete. A porter fetches the fiber mats. We lay them like book pages. Wood stops sweating into puddles. The scale thanks us. Pointer finds 0 instead of chasing drips. I weigh 3 crates in a quick cadence. Call, right. Lot, the inspector's circle passes each lid. Wax goes to paper, not fish. Clearance signed with the speed the sea demands for things that spoil. A gust lifts a tarp corner. I climb 2 rungs and cinch the eyelet with a new lashing. Palm rope bites. Canvas settles. The shed exhales. The squall spends half its anger on corrugate and moves on toward the ridge. On the quay, a crate marked pharmaceuticals shows a softening label. I mend it with a brush and paste. Add a paper guard at the seam. Pencil, keep cool in both hands of our language. The arrow for up drawn thick enough for a sleepy man at midnight to read. 3 tins of gum arrive wearing dust the color of distance. I wipe one face so the bond stamp won't slide. Blue lands true. Cable seal clicks. Digits 764. 477, 6449 walk. Beat into the ledger's margin. I underline once. Never twice. A Dow master sets a tally stick on my desk. Notched, smoked at the end. We read it together as cuts. My columns. Our numbers meet like poems. He pockets the stick again. I keep the paper. The cargo belongs to both until it belongs to neither. At the door I chalk a short lane just for hand carts. Squall grit has made the floor treacherous. The chalk says here, "Feet obey without looking." Courtesy is traffic law. The wind falls off the map. Heat returns with its patient hand. I press transit on an oil drum manifest and let the red dry while I fold fresh tags, strings pre-cut, knots rehearsed. Tomorrow's speed hidden in today's unhurried prep. Somewhere out in the roadstead a ship sounds as if clearing its throat. The tug answers like a friend who knows when to speak and when to let silence carry the work. Mid-afternoon is for numbers that refuse to be hurried. I spread bills of lading, dock receipts, and our own tallies into a tidy archipelago. Weights. Here, counts there. Seals in a column that walks straight. A discrepancy blinks. 2 drums on a slip, 3 on the manifest. I lift the carbon. Find the faintest figure turned by a wrist in heat. We walk to the stack. Chalks bite. Stencils speak. There are 3. The blue pencil draws a neat 3 on the slip. The Olivetti gives it a second life. We initial. The world writes itself by the smallest degrees. I total a page with a ruler under the line. Add in columns. Carry once. Cross-check against the dock boss's board. His chalk arithmetic agrees with ink. We shake our heads at heat and grin at the pleasure of consensus. The inspector calls seal numbers while I read them back. 76,450 to 76,463. Cadence even, no flourish. We trade initials at the bottom corner where signatures live like anchors. The tin grows lighter by the right amount. I date a stack of entry forms with the rubber wheel. 3 taps of ink. Press and lift, press and lift. The crest stays square. The day holds. Gum Arabic size. Blotter drinks. Paper becomes history at arm's length. A clerk from the harbor wireless brings a strip of telex. Pelago's bunkering. Departure at dusk. Karachi coaster now due at 4. I copied times into the margin and onto the small card that rides my pocket like a metronome. Ships move. Paper keeps pace without sweating. The typewriter ribbon tires. I nudge it forward a notch. Letters fill. Stems dark, bowls round again. The machine's smell of ink and metal becomes its own small weather at my elbows, on the floor. I chalk a small N.O. at the mouth of the scale. The pallet jack has opinions. Chalk turns them to manners. I sweep once more. Squall grit offers a final whisper and is gone. A porter asks for twine. I measure him 2 forearms length. Show him the bowline slow. His fingers learn the rabbit and the tree, and return the knot with pride. We both laugh softly because rope keeps old stories modern. The ledger page closes its sums with the last figure landing square. I draw a single line under the column. Number. Double. Double is for festivals. The fan's chain taps and seems to approve. The shed returns to its lowest register. From the roadstead, 1 long, 1 short. A freighter turns a thought into motion. Out there, fuel and water and anchors. In here, stamps, chalk, blue pencil. Both crafts ending as a neat departure stamped in red. Sun leans. Heat loosens its hold by a finger's width. The shed darkens into a tea-colored room. I trim the hurricane lamp. Inside first, then out. Flame held to a thread that prints without bleeding. Night clerk arrives with the smell of tobacco on his shirt and the patience of a man who likes numbers. Better than arguments. We stand by the board. Pelagos out at dusk. Convoy dows inward. Karachi coaster due at 4. Seals to 76,463. Spare sling ready, scale friendly. Nitrogen monoxide, chalk at the plate. He nods. I hand him my pocket card and he writes his own. We walk the lanes, fingers on chocks, eyes on tags. One rope sling flagged for a second look tomorrow. One label corner reinforced with a paper guard. Dates stacked high, gum sealed. Drums braced, fish already gone. The floor reads like a tidy. Story in chalk and broom marks. I show him the small mint sugar tin for night tea. Where the extra carbon waits. Which drawer the good pens prefer. Where the breeze finds the desk if the door sits at the second hinge notch. He grins. Every shed has its tricks. Every trick is a courtesy passed down. A Dow captain returns with a stick of incense, sets it on the rail for luck that smells like church and desert both. We do not refuse luck. The night clerk stamps his pass with the soft thud that says present, not urgent. The captain tips 2 fingers from his brow and vanishes into heat that now pretends to be cool. The inspector signs the last corner he owes and pockets the sealed tin like a man holding a watch. He nods at the lamp good trim and steps into a twilight that has learned to taste of salt and diesel at once. At the threshold I sweep the sill again. Habit is better than memory after long days. Sand leaves as if it had only borrowed our floor. We lock eyes with the harbor, a final time. Lights strain along the ridge. A tug makes a low curve. Gulls turn into paper cutouts against a violet scene. The shed takes a breath and stays full of it. I set my pencil along the ledger's spine. Cap the paste, lid the stamp. Square the blotter. Notes for morning pinned over the desk. Count seals to 140. Fetch carbon. Test sling I2. Sweep scale first thing. Chalk palette nose. Reconcile Karachi coil. The list looks like order given a chair. We shake hands the way stevedores. Pass a rope, not squeeze. Transfer. He sits. I step into air, the temperature of tea. The harbor writing itself in green and red dots across the black water. The Suez moves on with its quiet grammar. And the shed, our shed, keeps a ledger that can be read by anyone who knows how to breathe. Slow. Count straight and let stamps do their speaking without raising their voices. The key gives off its heat like a kill closing. Air cools by careful degrees. Lanterns make small lakes on stone. DIESEL thins to clove and charcoal. I take the harbor road home. Sandals, voices. A radio murmuring Hindi, then Arabic, then back again. News reduced to weather and cricket by distance. The right size for night. At the door the chain learns its note. The room meets me with clay and shade. A zir pot beads and cools. I drink water that remembers wind. It lands like advice taken. Slow, precise, kind, hands washed. Ink moons at the cuticles fade. Cardamom lives at the knuckle. Towel holds heat and gives it back. Supper in the memory more than the bowl. Lemon. And lentils and rice that never argued. On the balcony the roadstead writes itself in red and green, masthead steady. The tug draws a short curve, as if tiding a line on a map. I copy tomorrow's counts onto a pocket card. Seals to 140. Fetch carbon. Test sling I-2. Sweep scale first thing. Reconcile Karachi coil. The list sits like crates with aisles between. A gecko keeps the lamp. The fan turns on its patient axis. The street lets itself be smaller. Bowls ring in basins. A prayer shawl crosses a roof and becomes the night's only sail, shutter to a hand's breadth. Air slips through with a note of salt. Pencil pared twice. Shavings like thin cinnamon. Knife wiped on a rag that remembers paste. The mind piles its thoughts square and lets them stay. The hour before color belongs to ropes and boots. The tug coughs. Gulls wake without ceremony. I walk the lane while stone is still thinking about cool. Key turns. Hinge behaves. Fan chain taps. Lamp thread set to modest. Broom writes a crescent at the sill. Scale swept. Pointer finds zero with relief. Chalk box open like a clean bone basket. Telex on the pin. Karachi coaster 4 o'clock. She keeps it. By the time the sky thinks blue, she is shouldered against the quay. Lines over bits, bollards consenting. A bosun's whistle that ends in a question and gets its answer. Wire coils roll off a flat like moons that forgot the sky. Write chalk the first, chalk its number. Note the tear that someone cut too generous in a warm office. Reconcile by eye. Then with the 20 calo block, then with the book. The sum decides to be civil and lands square. I mark adjusted and circle. At once a coil's tag is bled. I mend the edge. Pencil the consignee in 2 hands. Inland name neat. Dock name plainer. We speak both. The crane hook kisses the eye. The sling takes weight without drama. I chalk a small O on the beam to say so. A crate of machine spares shows a lead that wants reading. 76,464. 76,465. I repeat back. Inspector repeats forward. Initials travel the margin like small oars. The tin grows lighter by the right number. Palm rope from the convoy dhows arrives with salt on its voice. I lay a thumb on a splice. Twine earns fresh wax. Tuck, pull, press, the lace moves. Rope thanks you without moving. The Olivetti wakes with its metal weather. Ribbon nudged, stems dark, bowls full. Gate passes march. Carbon breathes its shadow. Blotter drinks. I stamp. Transit for what only sleeps here, and duty paid for what stays. Red dries quick. Blue dries thoughtful. Both become history. Sand believes the scale is still a beach. I sweep. The plate blinks like steel. The pointer keeps its spine. The block returns to its drawer with the contentment of a tool that has done enough before breakfast. Heat climbs the tin. A new awning rope learns the knot that makes shade stay. Canvas slack found and taken. The shed exhales. Fan keeps time. Bills of lading. Dock receipts, our tallies spread to islands. I bring them to one coast with a crank machine that clicks. Like patient rain, carry, add, cross-check. The dock boss's chalk agrees with ink. We smile the way clerks do when arithmetic and weather both behave. A discrepancy flickers. Dates counted 2 bales light. The tally stick returns. Cuts match. Columns, the missing pair had stood to dry by the throat. We fetch them back. I draw a blue 2 where the paper had tried to forget. Initial, blot, piece restored by small attention. Glue pot lid lifts. A corner sets under a paper guard. Paste lays thin. Thumb warms it. Label lies down and understands its job. I pencil. Keep high. Ants read without eyes. Height refuses them audience. A porter returns my chalk worn to a pale crescent. I break it clean, sharp to his palm, blunt to mine. He marks up on a crate. The arrow looks cooler than the air. Instruction that survives noon, the inspector's sealed tin asks its count. 80 to 120, noted. I fetch the new tin from the phone. Cupboard where eucalyptus lives with paper. Numbers on the lid match the card. We sign the exchange like men swapping a watch. At the door I chalk a lane for handcarts. As the squall grit tries a second life, chalk says here, feet agree. Courtesy keeps ankles sound, mint tea again. Sweat on glass, sugar already signed. I place it by the blotter. Steam carries a garden under a tin roof. The sip lands between heat and patience like a treaty renewed. From the roadstead a horn speaks thirds. The tug answers with something like laughter. The Suez spine flexes and moves. We keep our page flat and readable. Evening leans. The shed turns tea-colored. Lamp trimmed inside first, then out. Flame to a thread that prints without bleeding. Night clerk steps from heat that now pretends cool. Tobacco at his cuff. Arithmetic. In his pocket, we stand at the board. Karachi coil reconciled. Convoy dows tallied. Seals to 76,485. Spare sling good. Scale friendly, pallet nose chalked. I hand him the pocket card. He writes his own. 2 small maps that agree. We walk the lanes, chalks firm, tags legible. Gum sealed tight. Dates stacked high and honest. Wire asleep behind wedges. Drums with bungs that don't wet their lips. The floor a story told by chalk and broom. I show him where the breeze finds the desk, if the door sits to the second notch. Where the mint. Tin lives. Which drawer prefers the good pens? Which corner claims the ants first if you forget to put height under sugar? He grins because every room has its science. Inspector signs his last corner. Pockets his tin like a watch. Nods at the lamp good trim. The Dow captain leaves a second stick of incense for luck that smells of church and desert both. We do not refuse luck, broom-hung bristles up. Weight block in its hollow. Stamp-lidded, paste-capped, blotter squared. Triplicate fan aligned like tidy gulls. The ledger gets its final line. Day complete, no irregularities. Reconciliations noted. I lay the pencil along the spine. I never snap a book shut. Paper likes to be thanked. We shake hands as stevedores pass a rope. Transfer. Not squeeze, he sits. I step into air the temperature of tea. Lanterns thread steamer point. Mastheads make their careful stars. The tug draws a curve and becomes a line. Harbor Road remembers the day and lets it go. Charcoal. Clove, the last. Radio speaking cricket in weather like lullabies. Sandals write brief notes on dust and then forget them. At home the Zir gives its mercy. Water cool as a secret, the room shrinks to fit sleep. Shudder to a hand's breadth. Fan to the pace of a tide that has made up its mind, I lay the pocket card on the sill and watch names turn into lights. Pelagos outward. Karachi coaster inward. And then gone. Al-Miraj dowels by moon. The Suez writes its long sentence and leaves us our clause. Breath chooses its measured lane. In out, like stamps on paper, like weights on steel, like rope through a thimble. The city outside moves in its quiet grammar. The shed keeps a ledger anyone could read if they breathe slow and count straight. Sleep comes like a seal closed clean, cable snug, digits copied, lamp trimmed to its patient thread, the day filed. The page calm, the world large, and your part of it exact. Enough, kindly held until morning asks for numbers again, on a scrap. Aboard I keep our language, a shorthand for weight and care. An arrow means up, for glass and for hearts that break easily, drawn thick so a sleepy man at midnight can read it. A triangle means H-I-G-H. For dates and anything ants, consider a party. Height is a fence you cannot see. 3 dots mean priority. Not drama, only sooner. The difference between today and tomorrow. When weather has opinions, a small circle in chalk on a beam means a sling you can love. Splice sound, thimble honest. Hook latch civil. No, on the floor is not anger. It is a kindness to ankles and balance. Palate noses learn manners when chalk speaks. Blue is B-O-N-D. Red is duty paid. Transit sits in purple that looks cooler than the room feels. 7 stitches at a sack's throat mean full measure. 5 invite talk. We prefer 7. A dot on the sideboard after a number means checked by eye and by block. Faith in steel and in human wrists, these marks walk the shed like quiet wardens. They save voices. They let the day pass in its own good order. Harbor Wireless gives us its thin rain. Of letters. Tape feeds from a trembling tin throat. Holes like a secret alphabet. The clerk tears a strip and pins it to the board. I copy into the margin and onto the pocket card. 3 places for one truth. We distrust lonely facts. Sometimes the tape misses a dot. Pelagos becomes Pelag-S. We do not scold the ocean for static. We call the ship's office. A calm voice returns the letter. Suez runs on courtesies as much as on fuel. The Olivetti answers with its own weather. Ribbon nudged, stems dark again. Bowls full, gate passes march in neat platoons. Carbon breathes. Its shadow, lauder drinks. Between wire and paper there is only the hand. It makes the conversion without ceremony. Sea language to shelf language, movement to rose. A hinge the size of 4 fingers that keeps the world from squeaking season. Turns a notch you can feel at the key. Water tins arrive bright as new moons, lids wired. Seals read aloud and answered back. 76,486 to 76,499. Digits walk into the margin and rest. Bundles of plain cloth, sandals roped in pairs. Dates stitched honest. 7-7, full measure. I. Chalk high and the arrow for up. Hands will meet them gently in the morning. Quarantine yellow works its square courtesy at the gangway. A doctor's lamp. A nod. A stamp that says not yet. Then, after breath and paper, says now. We keep shade true on the shed mouth. Canvas tied with a knot that will not slip when prayers finish and the lane asks for water to be patient. I stamp. Transit where the journey is only pausing. Bound where paper must breathe before feet do. Red for what stays. Blue for what waits. The lamp prints without bleeding. The day keeps its kindness. At month's end the ledger grows heavy in the hand, in a way that pleases bone. Gum Arabic sweet at the lip of pages. Spice and rope and hot iron trapped in paper like weather in a jar. We lace twine through brass eyes. Not a bow the archive likes. Write the year and the run of seal numbers on the spine. 7640176540. A little river of lead and ink that will not dry out of sense. Down the hall, a cupboard learns our names. Boxes breathe cool. Eucalyptus in a cracked jar keeps paper moths religious. The latch accepts oil and forgets to complain. I imagine a clerk decades from now loosening this bow, his finger lifting our lines into light, reading the triangle for H-I-G-H as if it were his own thought, smiling at an arrow that still points up in any century. Outside, Suez writes its long sentence across 3 oceans, and here the page holds its claws with grace, numbers square, stamps true, chalk quiet on wood, rope asleep, seals cooled, too. Their ordinary gray, we close the door without a snap. Fan chain taps once, the room leans to shade, and the work measured, merciful, exact goes on wherever weight meets paper, and both decide to be kind. Heat, not yet fierce. Light thin as paper. A man from head office arrives with a brass pen and a comb. We stand at the board. He asks for 3 things that cannot be rehearsed. Seal series, duty book. Random crate, I lift the tin, digits read and echoed. 765007512. Cadence even. We note where the gap sits from a night issue. The pocket card agrees. He ticks with pleasure. A clerk pretends not to feel. Duty book opens where sums meet law. Red ink shows rates that looked heavier last year. Figures align. Stamps. Square. No page that smells of hurry. He nods. Writes sound, small, random crate chooses itself. We set it down on the scale. Pointer lands. I set the block. It lands again where gravity says yes. Label reads as if we wrote it today. Paste smooth. Corners loyal. He smiles with half his mouth and calls it proof. He asks for the path of a drum from ship to gate. I lay it in 4 steps on the desk with ribbon still damp. Manifest. Doc receipt. Ledger line. Exit pass with the red showing duty paid. He follows the thread with a finger and finds no fray. At the threshold he studies the chalk on the floor. Nitrogen monoxide at the plate. UP on a glass crate. High on dates. A small language that keeps. Tempers out of runes. He writes, house marks excellent, and pockets the note as if it were a coin. We drink mint tea. He sets the cup down with care. He says only keep it like this. I say only if the wind agrees. We both laugh softly. The fan chain taps once. The sea answers with 1 long note that reaches us like a signature. By noon the tin roof drums in tiny. Clicks. Heat makes its calendar. A crate arrives with a corner open like a question. Not much, a cleat missing. Burlap peeking as if curious. I take the hammer with the light head. 2 panel pens, paste under a paper guard. Thumb presses a quiet lake flat. Wood decides to behave. The inspector watches because that is his craft. I speak the contents aloud. Machine spares, he nods. I seal the seam with wax. Die down. Lift. Crushed clean, I read the digits. He reads them back. Ink walks them into the margin and earns a line under itself. Inside the crate, a small tin, rattled free. I fix it with a paper collar and a twist of twine, not laid flat. Label rewritten where sweat had paled it, both scripts. One meaning, the porter learns the knot. His hands tell him they have seen it before. He grins. He carries the crate away on a shoulder that is known weight without complaint. Scale plate takes a new scratch. I smooth it with emery as fine as patience. The shine returns without boasting. Pointer finds 0 like a man finding his hat in the same place. A coil tag tries to tear at the hole. I punch a second hole and put them both on the string. Tomorrow's. Hand will bless today, not curse it. Late light finds the fan's shadow. The room cools by a finger's width. Wind backs a point. Goals lean the other way. I draw a little plan in the ledger's back margin, not to scale. To sense, dates high. Gum under shade. Drums chalked. Wire asleep behind wedges. Fish where mats wait. The shed turns to a map a stranger could walk without stubbing a toe. Beside it I write a dozen words that would teach the room to someone new. Chalk speaks first, stamps speak last. Keep sand away from the plate. Mend labels before men. Count. Seals twice, sweep the sill. Drink water, breathe slow. Be kind to rope. A boy from the pier returns the chalk stump. I give him the sharp and a story of knots folded into 2 pictures, bowline, sheet bend. He nods as if the page weighed something good. He tucks it where bullets might sit in other times. We are lucky in our kind of paper. From the roadstead, a ship lets go its light with a sound like a long yawn. The tug replies and becomes smaller. The Suez writes its sentence past us and does not need our comment. Lamp trimmed. Inside first, then out. Flame set to thread. Stamps lidded. Paste capped. Weight block home. Broom hung bristles up so they keep their manners. I write a last line for this hour. Reconciled drums, mended cleat, coil tag doubled, plan made. Notes. Left, no irregularities. The page looks calm. The air tastes of spice and iron in a ratio that means day has kept its word. At the door I sweep a crescent, so the first footfall of night lands on clean concrete. Chalk ghosts read like good advice. I step into harbor air, the temperature of tea, and watch the dots of masthead light stitch 3 oceans to 1 quiet quay. Breath in, breath out. A ledger balanced by small rightnesses. A world large enough to forgive itself because somebody, somewhere, counted kindly. Morning comes with a dry hand. Wang from the north lifts grit to eye height. The chamal does not shout. It files. I walk the mouth of the shed and drop the awning 2 holes. Canvas bows. Rope learns its new duty. 2 half hitches. A clove where wood wants to remember. Tarpaulin grommet on the date stack thinks about tearing. I stitch a ring of waxed twine through the cloth. Needle warmed on the lamp chimney. Palm against the thimble. The whole becomes a rule instead of a rip. Drum chocks want a second thought. I add a wedge and a nail set flush. Heads tapped smooth so no bare foot meets a surprise. Wire coil breathes dust. I lay wet sacking along its windward side. Weight with 3 bricks. The coil forgets to wander. The ledger gets a small line windproofed. No more than that. A Dow master shows palm senate he braided on the reach end. We test it on the hook that tells truth. Eye holds. Lay smooth. I chalk a small circle on the beam above his lane, and he laughs. The mark travels even to cloth rope when the work is honest. At the door I write slow and chalk big as a hand. Wind makes men hurry. Chalk asks them not to. Feet listen. Corners happen without drama. The chamal taps the tin like light rain. Inside, the fan finds its rhythm and keeps it. Paper stays flat under a small weight. Stamps land square. Grit stays. On the sill where the broom put it. Order is a shade tied down. Not an argument won. Customs man brings a sample tin. Stenciled kerosene. Transit. The drum's bung shows lead unbroken. Still, the book asks for gravity. I set the beaker in the shade. Pour a clear column. The hydrometer lowers with the ceremony of a priest. Meniscus red at the eye, 0.80 and a breath. Within the band, I write it twice, card and ledger. The number steadies the room. Dip rod takes its measure as courtesy, cloth wiped. Seal digits read back, 76513, 76516. Initials travel like small. Oars, the inspector's pencil scratches once and rests. At the big scale I lay the 20-kilo block. Pointer lands true. The pocket spring scale for sling tests says the same when I hang the block from its hook. Two devices agreeing turn suspicion into habit. Habit into confidence. I ink transit in purple for the drums that only pass. Blotter drinks. The kerosene smell becomes a thread under cardamom. A map of the day in cents as well as figures. Spill tray wants a wipe. Emery as fine as patience takes out the new scratch. The steel returns to its plain face. No boast. The broom makes a crescent at the lip. Sand declines the invitation to enter. Season tilts. Water tins arrive, ribbon wired. Lids bright. The doctor's lamp nods once. Quarantine Square learns the word now. I stamp bond in blue, where paper must breathe. Transit in purple, where feet will. Duty nowhere, because mercy is the tariff today. Digits copied into the margin. 765177654. The series closes a neat river. On the card in my pocket, cloth bundles carry sandals in pairs. Dates stitched 7 and 7. I chalk high and up wide as my palm. Height denies ants their congregation. Arrows turn caution into grace. At the gate I pass forms printed in 2 hands. One for the key, one for the road. Men read with fingers. Lips moving, then fold paper like talismans. Water tins thunk into the dust with a sound that means relief. A mullah touches the ledger's edge with his forefinger and smiles. We do. Not need words for that. The stamp lands, crest square. Date true. The room shrinks to kindness for a minute. Dusk leans. The fan ticks. Lights blink once and give up. The city inhales. Generator somewhere clearing its throat. The hurricane lamp comes forward. Inside first, then out. Flame to a patient thread. Typewriter sleeps. The ledger does not mind. Pencil finds its lane. Numbers add without needing keys. I lay bills of lading to the left. Dock receipts to the right. Our tallies center. Ruler under the line. Carry once. Cross-check against the dock boss's chalk. His board says what the pencil says. Trust becomes. Cool air even when the air is not cool. A crate corner asks for a paper guard. Paste lays thin. Thumb presses lake to flat. Label stops thinking about leaving. The lamp makes a small island where work is enough. Power returns like a polite guest. Lights rise without scolding the lamp. I lower the flame and let glass remember. Clean, wick trimmed, soot wiped inside first. Then out, I pin a note for morning count seals to 160. Fetch carbon. Sweep scale first thing. Mend grommet 2. Polish stamp die. The list looks like chairs set straight after a meeting where people listened. At the door, the broom writes its crescent, so the first boot of night meets clean floor. Chalk ghosts speak their small wards up. High. Nitrogen monoxide. Slow. The language of elbows and ankles. Of patience made visible. Outside, the harbor writes itself in green and red. The chamal spends its last coins on corrugate. Somewhere a tug laughs in thirds. I breathe with the key. Slow in, slow out. Heel then toe. Toe then heel. And the ledger in my hand feels like a kind weight that will sleep well until morning asks. It to wake and be exact again. That morning brings the man with the leather case. Scale fitter, quiet shoes. Plumb line coiled like a tame snake. We clear the platform, brush a crescent. Sand away from pivots. He opens his case and sets out brass like small suns. 5, 10, 20, 50. Each weight stamped honest, knife edges lifted. With a cloth, dust taken with a breath. Bearings dabbed with graphite thin as shade. Fulcrum proves square under his mirror. Bubble finds the circle and sits. He hangs the plumb from the gantry crossbar. String still, bob true. We sight the pillar against the mark I chalked last season. It agrees. Chalk earns a second life. Weights go up in pairs. Pointer answers like a hand that has learned manners, error thin as a hair. He tunes it out with 2 turns of a nut. The dial returns to 0 as if relieved. Certificate writes itself in triplicate. His hand neat, mine beside it. Dock boss adds a line. Scale proved. To 2,000 kilograms. Date, crest. 3 signatures that look like anchors. I stamp the plate on the frame. Proved in purple. Crest square. Date true? The metal takes the mark and keeps it. A good instrument made polite again. Brown paper parcel from town. Twine not modest. Inside a new customs die. Rubber clean. Letters sharp. The old one goes to the drawer with thanks. Ink is low, and the pad has learned thirst. I open the tins. Aniline powder like dusk. Glycerin like syrup, a spoon of water. Slow stir until purple remembers itself. The smell of schoolrooms under a tin roof. Test on scrap. Crest prints crisp. Date sits straight. I roll the wheel once. Day moves by a clean click. Proofs pinned where eyes will find them, and approve without meeting. The die's handle wants a whisper of oil at the screw. Thread seat with a gentle yes. I stamp 4 corners of a blank to teach my hand the weight of the new tool. The blotter drinks and leaves edges unfrayed. Old pad flipped to its unused side. The new ink becomes a polite lake. I set the cover so dust will not inherit the day. 2 Bedford lorries take shade at the inland gate. Tarps tied like thoughtful roofs. Drivers with sun in their eyes and patience in their pockets. I lay the forms in 2 hands. Key to road, road to post. Names in both scripts. Seals on the corners that like seals. Customs note transit for goods. That only pass. Red for what stays, blue for what breathes. Tarps get a palm along the rope. Clove hitches tight. Half hitches where wood remembers. I chalk HEH on dates. Up on glass. No near the scale mouth, so the pallet jack keeps manners when the lane grows busy. A border sergeant appears the way heat does. Quietly, I show him the gate passes. We trade initials that know how to stand up straight. He leaves with a nod the size a uniform allows. The drivers set their caps. Engines turn like coffee mill wheels. Lorries ease into the road's white, paper leads. Weight follows. Dust writes their names and forgets them. Palm rope slings hang like questions waiting for kindly answers. Eye to eye, thimble to hook. I take the one I marked last week. Fibers gone to fuzz. Pride strand lifting, knife back, twine waxed. I unlay the tired eye, cut the weakness out like a thorn. Splice taut to new rope with patient turns. Tuck, pull, press, whipping laid flat. The lay goes smooth as sleep, the old piece does not. Go to waste. I make 2 short fenders for the fish mats, tar brushed thin. They will teach wet wood not to bruise tin. A boy from the pier watches with elbows on knees. I show him bowline first, sheet bend second. His fingers stumble, then remember, we tie, untie, tie again. He leaves with a nut in his pocket like a small power he earned. On the beam I chalk a small circle above the lane that now owns the new sling. The mark travels farther than voices when wind has thoughts. Late light thickens. Sea haze takes color from iron roofs and gives none back. Mastheads bloom, red to port, green to starboard. Grammar you can read without book or school, a clerk. From the ship's office brings a question about a coil count. I lift the string file, manifest, dock receipt, ledger line, exit pass. 4 steps on the desk. He follows them with a finger. Finds no fray. We add 1 note adjusted by block at scale. Both margins nod. He pockets the copy. I stamp the corner with the new die. Crest sharp. Date true. The sound a soft thud that says present. Not urgent, the fan finds its evening tempo. Chain taps. The column once each turn. The shed breathes easier by a finger's width. Mint left from noon returns to the glass as scent and a memory. I write a small card for morning-proof pad covers. Count seals to 180. Fetch fresh chalk. Oil. Door latch, test sling 3. Sweep sill before light. The list sits like a lane with space to pass. Dusk leans into violet. The roadstead stitches itself with dots. A tug laughs in thirds. A gull becomes paper against the seam of sky and water. Hurricane lamp trimmed. Inside first, then out. Wick. To thread, chimney clear. I set its circle on the desk so numbers can walk without stumbling. Bills of lading to the left. Dock receipts to the right. Our tally center. Ruler under the last sum. Carry once. Add twice. Cross-check with the dock boss's chalk agreement is a breeze in a hot room. Stamp lids closed. Paste capped. Weight block home. Broom hung bristles up. Die wrapped in oiled paper just enough to keep it young. The ledger gets its line scale. Proved. Die renewed. Slings mended. Inland gate cleared. No irregularities. I lay the pencil along the spine. Never snap a book. Paper likes farewell the way rope likes a proper hitch. At the door I sweep a crescent so the first boot of night meets clean floor. Chalk ghosts hold their watch. Up. High. Nitrogen monoxide. Slow. Small language that keeps tempers out of rooms. Outside Suez. Writes its long sentence past our mouth. We hold a clause of it steady. Numbers square. Stamps true. Rope honest. And the fan, patient as tide, says the day can sleep now. The shed agrees. And so do I.